If you were to ask me, what does education give us? I would reply something along the lines of, education gives us both a capacity to learn and a learned capacity to conform, and conformity reduces our inclination to take risks. Conformity involves individual alignment with the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviours of those around us. We may think of ourselves as unique, independent, free-thinking individuals, but in reality, as social beings and for the sake of group cohesion, each of us are evolutionarily driven to fit in. Hence, social pressure drives individuals to copy the actions of others based on the groups of accepted norms and behaviours of doing what's expected, even if these are unspoken expectations, and conforming to tacitly agreed standards. Standards in education may be set in terms, for example, of behaviour in class, but also by levels of achievement and standards achieved through and reached through assessment. Learning, as it's traditionally perceived by our culture, is a sorting process into those that have attained a standard and those who've not. According to the educationalist Dave Cormier, it is a we-making process, and it is, like all we-making processes, a them-making process also. We are literate, we have a PhD, we're a teacher, we're a student. All of these things exclude the people who are not part of the we belonging. They privilege a certain kind of thinking or knowing. In a sense, our education system is a training ground for the privileges of conformity. A conformity that is certainly easier for many, and a conformity that's totally inaccessible for many others. It teaches us that conformity to power is what belonging looks like. It would be rational to assume that the higher levels of education are achieved through continued or higher degrees of conformity, and thereby greater privileges. Challenging conformity, challenging the standards, the accepted norms, involves a risk. A very real risk of being excluded from the class, the power base, and the privileges of knowing. And it would seem rational enough to assume that the longer one stays within education, from degree to higher degrees to research postdoctoral roles, the pressure to conform only increases, and risk-taking then accrues potentially greater consequences. Thus, those in the highest echelons of an education system are less likely to be risk takers, as the accumulated cost of challenge becomes prohibitive, hindering acceptance among peers and career advancement. There is certainly evidence that professional knowledge producers, our academic scientists, tend towards conforming in a number of different ways, and that science itself requires increasing level of standardization in the research models, the paradigms, the methodologies, accepted standards of proof, and the processes of publication. Conformity amongst academic peers and the fear of non-conforming risk-taking can have real impact on research, discovery, invention, and innovation. When it comes to Research Council funding, panels of experienced expert specialist scientists who assess whether or not research projects should be funded, these panelists are by their very nature conformist and risk-averse. Hence, projects that challenge the status quo, approaches or paradigms, or projects with a perceived high risk of failure are unlikely to be supported. The same principles can be applied to reviewers of scientific papers for publication. It's safer to hide behind a risk-averse decision to not publish, a decision, I'm sadly to say, made easier to justify by anonymous reviews. Lastly, the implications of increased conformity and reduced propensity to risk-taking behaviour within higher educational systems has massive implications for innovation in terms of producing scientific entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are, by their very nature, risk-takers. But if higher levels of education require increasing levels of conformist behaviour, behaviour that is for the most part counter to risk-taking and an anathema to most entrepreneurs, then it means that the very place where we need entrepreneurial behaviour, in creating disruptive technologies, that is amongst our academic scientists, we have least chance of finding it. Higher education conformism, then, limits opportunity for disruptive scientific innovation.